Hello everybody, this is Echo, coming at you with a video that's probably about 2 years overdue at this point. In my defense, the Witch Elf build has changed pretty dramatically since an update I want to say was like 6 months ago, but maybe it was longer and we're all just getting really old and can't keep track of time anymore. That being said, I wanted to make this video because I owe it to you all and go through what I think most consider the sort of best in class, best in slot Witch Elf build at this time. Maybe a brief introduction in case you didn't catch one of my videos 2 years ago, and I wouldn't blame you for that. At this point, those videos are still somewhat relevant, but the builds have changed a little bit. So my in-game character name is Echo. I've been a long time player on the Return of Reckoning Warhammer server. I am the guild leader of Battle Angels, formerly known as OnlyFans, and that's a whole story in and of itself. But in Battle Angels, you have, I think, over half of the 80 guild members are level 40 Witch Elves. It is really more of a solo guild. Basically, once you hit level 40, I promote you to being able to assign standards at will. And so if you're grouped up with other people and not us, you can like freely assign standards and use standards and that sort of thing. That's really all the guild provides at this point in time. So anyways, long-time Warhammer fan, long-time Witch Elf player, also play the Witch Hunter fairly regularly. But let's just get right into it. These videos end up going pretty long, and I think for this video, I'm going to try to record over the next couple days or so and actually show you the build in action after the guide. Maybe I'll put a timestamp in if you just want to see some brief gameplay clips. You know, fair warning, I'm not going for like the big shocker value clips. I'm only going to record over 2 days, and I'm going to get what I get, and that's what you're going to see. All right, so anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the current setup here. Now we'll do what we normally do. I'll go through my skill bars. We'll go over to our couple trainers here and take a look at them. But let's just start with the gear real quick. And then we can sort of go from there with how we want to do things. So, the Witch Elf. A little bit has changed, I think, between this build and my prior builds. So first and foremost, we have the Victorious Hex Veil in the head slot. Let me zoom in a little bit here for us. The Victorious Hex Veil in the head slot. I don't have an event item right now, but just know that gives you between, I think, what is it, 12 strength and then up to 24 strength if you do and get like the competitive event item. So keep that in mind. That's usually what you want to put there, is that strength event item. The Victorious Hex Veil, slot it with the strength gem. The Sovereign Shoulders, slot it with the strength gem. The Sovereign back piece or the cape, slot it with the strength gem. The Victorious Corset, slot it with the strength gem. The Triumphant Embracers, slot it with the strength gem. The Triumphant Vile Cord, and then the Victorious Thigh Bands, slot it with the strength gem. Over on the right hand side, you have Genesis Remnant of the Warrior, Genesis Aspect of the Warrior, the Triumphant Life Shard, and then the Sovereign Life Shard. And obviously in the Triumphant Life Shard, you could slot a critical hit, talisman, or whatever you prefer to put into this. Now, these pieces of armor or gear were selected specifically because it gives us the largest amount of benefits with respect to strength and wounds, which is what we're sort of stacking in this particular setup. It allows us to move off of the brute force career tactic, which really just takes up an unnecessary slot. The other big benefit into just stacking strength and wounds here is that if you look at my unpotted health right now. I'm already almost at 10,000, which is a substantial amount for a Witch Elf. But let me take you along the bottom route here. So this is a newer item I even just found out about recently. I think it's you get this from a quest in one of the elf zones. I'm sure a quick Google search will lead you to it. It has a great modifier there, which is -3% to critical damage taken. You have the Spicy Troll Mushroom, which I think most folks are aware of at this point. I use 1 Bloodlord. Some folks slot 2 Bloodlords if you're going for a real glass cannon build. I do not. I have the Fortress Blood Drinker instead. Both of these, again, slotted with strength gems. So that takes you through the gear setup. You can kind of get a look at what my current stats are here. I think the big one, maybe the one we'll hover over here, is initiative. So my chance to be critically hit is currently 1.4%. Typically, folks like to get this as low as possible, even heavy into the negatives. I have frankly found in my many years playing this game that unless you're doing highly competitive, 6v6 type of setups, as long as that number is sufficiently low, 1, 2, 3%, maybe a little bit negative, you should be fine here. I don't really see much of a difference in my one-on-ones or anything like that with anything higher than this, or I should say lower than this. So a lot of the optimization here is based on me not min-maxing this specific stat. Otherwise, they're pretty typical stats from what you'd see from a Witch Elf. Maybe I'll just quickly go through each of these so you can sort of see what we're working with here. Pretty high parry chance, and you'll see why in a second. Pretty high critical hit chance. Melee power could be better. I think they're actually releasing a couple new items here soon that might boost some of that for the Witch Elf, which is exciting. And just to be clear, remember, for melee power, I think what I'm trying to say is, just so we don't get confused, typically you want to hit your strength cap of 1050, and then instead of continuing to stack strength on top of that, you would want to switch over into melee power. You get more benefit from melee power after you hit your strength cap than just stacking strength, or at least that is what I have historically been told. All right, hovering through the rest of these pretty quickly here. I don't know if I did all of these, so let's go through it. And let's go ahead and pot up here so you can see what my potted stats look like. Obviously, the strength cap, if you use the event items, can be hit, especially if you use plus 24 gems, which I do not have slotted in all of my pieces. The rest of these, again, are what you might expect. Wonderful. Okay. Now that that's done, let's move over to the skills. We'll start with the build itself. So the build I run today, and the build I think a lot of Witch Elves run today, is the Sacrificial Stab build. Now, the Sacrificial Stab build historically has been one of the coolest builds to play because the prior iteration of that skill gave you, I think, increased attack speed, and then you would stack that with I think it was a tactic called Mom, and or at least that was the acronym for, and that would give you even more attack speed. So it was really fun. You felt like a really fast Witch Elf. You're attacking very quickly. It felt very lore appropriate. I think they moved away from that pretty substantially at this point. But with recent changes, or I should say more recent changes in the past, I think 6 months or so, Sacrificial Stab is now back to the top of the list. So let's go through and look at my build specifically. Again, as always, you could swap this up a little bit, but I'll try to explain some of the reasoning here as I go through it. So in the Path of Treachery tree, you grab Elixir of Shadows, you grab Heartseeker, you grab Masterful Treachery, you grab Sacrificial Stab, and then you can go up one additional notch there for a little bit of extra damage boost across those related skills. Nothing in Path of Suffering. In Path of Carnage, grab Elixir of Insane Power, and then my personal, probably favorite ability in the whole game is Pierce Armor. I just feel that it hits incredibly hard almost all the time. All right, so now that you have that sort of selected, maybe let's take a look at our tactics. Now, my tactic choices, ever since I've really played this game, have been a little bit controversial, primarily because I use sacrifices to reward it. If you haven't used sacrifices to reward it, I suggest you try it. It is probably one of my favorite tactics in the entire game. It's not because it blocks 600 damage, it's because it blocks an entire hit. Or at least it used to. If that has changed, you can correct me in the comments. But the idea is, if you have sacrifices reward it going, and somebody hits you for 2,000 damage, it will actually absorb all 2,000 damage, but then of course the tactic can no longer trigger again for another 3 seconds or whatever. So the big benefit to sacrifices reward it, at least, again, if they changed it, that's my fault, but at least it used to be that it would nullify a very powerful hit, or at least it had the potential to nullify a very powerful hit. Honestly, even without that, 600 damage absorb every 3 seconds or so is still, like, pretty good. Anyways, you have increased pain, which is pretty typical. Masterful treachery, which again, relatively typical, especially if you're going for sort of the pop out of stealth and kill type builds. Then you have flanking, which again is pretty typical. Attacking enemies from the side, also very standard in sort of your knockdown builds and most builds in general. You can switch this up, right? Like you can take off sacrifices reward it for something like Frenzied Mayhem. If you're doing PvE, you might put on Baneful Touch. You could do all sorts of stuff here. But I would say the 3 core tactics are Increased Pain, Masterful Treachery, and Flanking. Okay, moving on to the skills, you have the Heart Render Toxin. This, I think it might have gotten a buff. I'm not sure. Either way, it's pretty good now. And the reason it's good is because, especially for tankier targets, it's basically a free 930 damage wounds reduction. So it's not true damage, but it's effectively damage in a way, as long as you think you can kill them in around 15 seconds. Also very good for like 6v6 play as well. Going down the list the rest of the way, you have Pierce Armor. I think most folks are familiar with what Pierce Armor does, but if not, look it up. It's a very good opening ability to get off right at the rip. Agonizing Wound, this is your spam ability. Racking Pains. Honestly, I typically do use Racking Pains in my opener. I have just found more times than not that sometimes people walk away with 300-400 health, and if I would have thrown a Racking Pains on them, they probably would have died. You have Heartseeker for your knockdown. Sacrificial Stab. Now, Sacrificial Stab, the big changes with this is that if you hit them with it, you pretty much ignore all armor, and you snare them for 40 seconds, which is honestly really nice because it prevents folks from fleeing from you as easily, especially with Shadow Leap, which I believe also got changed recently, where this used to be something you could only use out of stealth. Now you can just use it freely, so these two pair really nicely. Slice is pretty good now. You can actually spam this to hit invisible targets because now it just hits in a cone in front of you. Sever Blessing, this is useful when attacking healers or again in group play, a little maybe more advanced gameplay there, but something you could consider using. Throat Slitter, again, this is an alternative to Heartseeker, or maybe Heartseeker is on cooldown and you're attacking a caster. And Venom Blade, useful for really tanky targets, which is why I keep it here. You could throw a stack of this on a tank that is trying to outlast you and potentially kill them down with this. Sever Limb, again, similar to Throat Slitter, except for melee targets. You can use it if Heartseeker is on cooldown and you popped, I think it's a parry is what makes this trigger. Then you have Kiss of Death, which is the secondary kiss but your primary kiss is Kiss of Agony. You would use Kiss of Death if you were opening up on a healer to lessen the amount of healing they're able to do to themselves. But Kiss of Agony is what you should be running most of the time. Along the bottom, you have Flee, you know, your Detaunt, always useful to use. Be sure to try to, like one of my biggest weaknesses is I don't use this enough, especially when you're opening on, you know, a group of 2 or 3 people. This could potentially keep you alive long enough by lessening the damage the 2 people you aren't attacking do to you. So very useful to remember to use this. You have the 2 healing pots. I use 1 heal over time and 1 insta heal. I don't spend big money on potions. I don't have the really expensive potions. These do just fine. I do use an absorb potion. These are critical, especially in maybe prolonged 1v1s, but you really only need the 5-second version of this as long as you time it decently well. And then your 2 action point potions. Again, I shouldn't have to explain those. Your pick locked ability, I have my banner here, mount. Shadow Prowler, throwing dagger. If we look at Shadow Prowler real quick, Vehement Blades is pretty much what you should always use. There's, I think, very few times where you shouldn't use it. Treacherous Assault, if, you know, you're pretty confident you're attacking a caster who isn't going to move at all, then you maybe could use Treacherous Assault and it would be a little bit better. Okay, continuing along, Fleet-Footed, you know, also something you can pop along with your openers. A lot of these don't trigger, you know, skill cooldowns. I think these 2 don't. This one might. The other change that was made is that you can now use, you know, 2 elixirs. You can't use them immediately back to back because I think it'll cancel the buff of one of them, but you can keep both of them on. So now you essentially can get the benefit of Elixir of Shadows and also the benefit of Elixir of Insane Power, just depending on who you're attacking and why. Agile Escape, great for 1v2s if you need to put somebody, especially a healer, out of commission while you maybe finish bursting down your DPS target. Assist, you know, do set these up. These are really nice if you're playing in a duo. You can throw an assist on your buddy and then automatically lock onto the target they're attacking. I use Liniment of the Tempest. Again, it gives you that melee power increase. So here's your melee power again. So you don't necessarily need the wounds buff. If you feel like you already are doing enough damage and you just want to be super tanky, you can actually use Liniment of War Hunger, and that will push your wounds or health over 10,000. Makes you very, very tanky. You can use whatever best armor pot you can afford as your second potion, or your second, your second potion, your second buff. You know, Potion of Acclaim, another sort of event item, Guild Recall Scroll, Book of Binding. So that takes us through, I think, the entirety of this setup. Maybe we'll take a quick look, since we're being thorough, we'll take a quick look at these trees here. So I think, let's see, I think I'm on Might 3. I think that's as high as you need to take it. Let's walk through. I haven't looked at these in a while, to be honest. It looks like I took 3 into the parry tree as well. You get a pretty big benefit from this parry tree. Looks like I took 1 Feudal Strikes. Again, if you want to go negative, you could take this second level of Feudal Strikes and then roll back your parry, or even roll back your strength if you're running a different build than me. And then obviously maybe the most important one on here is Opportunist 4, so make sure you take the entire path of that critical tree. And just double check to make sure I'm not missing anything here. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so 3 ticks in strength, the whole tree of Opportunist, and then in the defensive tree, you can really mix and match these. But I grabbed 1 Feudal Strikes and 1 parry. If I was doing something like competitive ranked, you know, I probably would tick this down and try to tick this up as high as possible, because it does matter in focused 6v6 gameplay a little bit more, in my opinion. All right, I know that's lengthy. It's always lengthy. There's a lot to cover in these build guides, especially when I'm trying to just do it all in one go without a script and just walk you guys through it. Let's cut over to some gameplay, and I think I won't even talk over it. You can sort of just watch it unfold. I'll leave the combat tab up here so you can see the type of damage I'm doing. And I guess I'll say goodbye here. I hope you're still enjoying Warhammer. I hope to see you in the realm as the days progress. Happy, healthy, best wishes to everybody. Talk soon. Alrighty, just to make sure I'm clear again, these are just clips I managed to get over a couple hours of gameplay. I'm not saying it's great. I'm not saying it's even good, but it'll give you an idea of the type of numbers you can expect with this build, and that was really my goal. Good luck out there, Witch Elves.